All right, welcome back, everybody. We are continuing with our angle vocabulary today. We learned a few words yesterday. We flip back to what we learned right angle. There's an angle that measures 90 degrees. An acute angle is an angle that measures less than 90 degrees. Okay, obtuse angle measures more than 90 degrees. Straight angle measures exactly 180 degrees. Okay, one thing we may or may not have gotten down yesterday is vertex. So if you haven't gotten vertex down yet, let's make sure we get that one filled in too. So the vertex is a point where the rays meet. Okay, so whenever you have an angle, you got a line going out this way, a line going out this way. The point where they meet is what we call the vertex. So here it's B. Okay, so it's right in the middle. We talked about the three different ways we can name an angle. Okay, where I was using this little angle symbol. We could do ABC, CBA. Okay, those are kind of the full names. Notice it doesn't matter which direction we go, but we got to have the vertex in the middle. So we got to start at one end and go to the other end. Okay. We could call it just angle one, or we could just name it by its vertex as long as there's no other angles on that vertex. So that's fine. In this picture, we could just call it angle B. Okay. So make sure you have all these definitions in there. Also, we talked about having pictures in there. If you don't have pictures by these yet, please pause the video now and write down a picture next to your definition for each one of these. It's going to be really good to have a picture to go along with this to help you understand and remember the concept. So please write a picture if you don't have one yet, and then we can move on with filling in two more of our cards. All right, so the next one we're going to fill in is the one that says complementary angles. So again, just like vertical and adjacent angles, complementary angles is a way of describing how two angles are related to each other. So you wouldn't say an angle is complementary. That doesn't make sense. You would say two angles are complementary to each other. It describes how they're related. Okay, so complementary angles, the definition is angles whose sum is 90 degrees or who add up to 190 degrees. Okay, so make sure you get that definition on the back along with the picture. Here I got a picture of a couple examples. Okay, so remember 90 degrees is a right angle. So complementary angles together will make up a right angle. Okay, so we have a picture of a right angle here. It says this angle is 50. This angle is, we're calling angle A. Okay, but these two angles together are complementary because together they make 90 degrees. Okay, same thing here. 90-degree angle. We got this 57-degree angle and this angle just marked A. It's another example of complementary angles. Now, in these two pictures, the angles are next to each other, and I did that to illustrate that they make a right angle together, so you could see that clearly. But they don't need to be adjacent. They don't need to be touching and pushed together like this in order to be complementary. The definition is just angles that add up to 90 degrees. So whether they're together or apart doesn't matter. Okay? If the two angles add up to 90 degrees, they are complementary to each other. So if I look at these two angles, which are completely separate, this one is 63 degrees. This one is 27 degrees, both acute angles. If I add those together, 63 plus 27, I do get 90. Okay, so this is another example of complementary angles. Even though they're not touching, they're complementary because they add up to 90 degrees. Now, we can use that information a lot of times to figure out what an angle is. And this is kind of where we're going with some of this stuff, is to use this information to learn things or to discover things about angles. So here it says the measurement of angle CBD. So if I want to know what angle that is, I'm going to start at C, go to B, and then out to D. Okay. If I do that, I'm tracing this angle here with the 2. Okay, so this angle, I could also call angle 2, is 53 degrees. Okay, what is the measurement of DBA? So DBA is this angle here. That's marked angle 1. Okay. Notice I couldn't refer to either of these angles as angle B because there's more than one angle on that vertex. Okay. But these are the full names. I could have also called them angle 2 and angle 1. But if this is 53 and this is 1, and I know they're complementary, I know that together they make a 90-degree angle. I've got to figure out what this angle is. Okay? And I can do that by using the equation stuff that we just did in our last unit. Okay, so if these two add up to 90, I know 53 degrees plus something. I don't know what it is. I'll just say x adds up to 90 degrees. Okay. If we think about how we did that last unit, to figure out what I'd have to add 53 to get 90, I can just subtract 53 and do that to both sides. So I get x equals 37. That tells me that angle 1 here is 37 degrees. Okay. Now you may be able to tell just by looking at this that if they add up to 90, this is 53. You want to know what's left over, you can just do 90 minus 53. That's fine. You don't have to write out the equation if you can tell that. But note that that is what happened. That's what we ended up having to do, right? In order to figure out what this angle was, we had to do 90 minus the 53 that we already had. Okay, so if two angles are complementary and you know one of them, you can find the other one just by subtracting the one you know from 90 degrees. All right, let's look at supplementary. Supplementary angles, very similar, but supplementary angles are angles whose sum is 180. So that's the difference. So they don't make a right angle together, they make a straight angle or a straight line together. Okay, so here's an example. So angle 1, angle 2. If you put them together, they make a straight line. Okay, I got marked down here some measurements on those. So angle 1 might be 32 degrees, for instance, and angle 2 is 148 degrees. If you add those together, 148 plus 32, you do in fact get 180. Okay. All right, so here's another example. We got angle 1 and angle 2. Again, they make a straight line. Okay, and this one tells us that they're supplementary. They make a straight line. If the measurement of angle 1 is 55 degrees, what is the measurement of angle 2? Okay, so again, if I know these add up to 180 degrees, and this one is 55, to figure out what this other one is, I can just take my 180 and subtract 55. Okay, if you do that, you get 125. Okay, so 2 would be 125 degrees. Okay. So if they're supplementary, if they make a straight line and you know what one is, you can find the other just by subtracting from 180. All right, so those two terms are very similar and get mixed up a lot. So we're going to talk just a couple ways about how to remember which is which. So how to tell the difference between supplementary, that adds up to 180, and complementary, which adds up to 90. Okay, so we're going to go through about 3 or 4 examples here, 3 or 4 different methods. Pick your favorite. You don't have to remember them all, but try to remember one that makes most sense to you and see if that helps you remember the difference between these. Okay. Another way, hopefully, you're using to help remember these is those flashcards. So be going through these flashcards once a day. Takes just a couple minutes, and it'll really help you remember these. Okay, so first method is this. You might hear the phrase, "It's right to give compliments." Okay, a right angle is 90 degrees, and compliment and compliment are not exactly the same word, but it does help you remember. So a right angle is 90 degrees. So that means the two angles make a right angle. They are complementary to each other. It is right to give compliments. Okay. All right. Method number 2. If you take the letter C and you put a vertical line to the right of it. Oh, oops. Let's try that again. Right vertical line down on the right side, you get a 9. All right, 9 hopefully reminds you of 90. And complementary angles. Okay, so you can picture that C turning into a 9 for 90. Okay. All right, third method, alphabetical order. Alphabetical order puts complementary before supplementary. Okay, so this complementary comes first alphabetically. Well, in numerical order, 90 comes before 180. Okay, so complementary comes first, 90 degrees comes first. Supplementary comes second, 180 degrees comes second. So they're in alphabetical order, matches up with the numerical order. Okay, so that might help you. I'm going to add a fourth method just because it's how I learned it and how I've always remembered it. So in case you like this one. Okay, so here I'm going to draw crooked means like bent. So I'm going to draw a crooked line. This line is crooked. Okay. Crooked starts with a C. C stands for complementary. Okay. A straight line starts with an S. S stands for supplementary. Okay. So use that one if you like that better. That is how I learned it in school. All right, so I got a couple of questions for you. Let's have you pause the video here and see if you can do this. Okay. Once you think you've answered each of these 4 questions, go ahead and resume it and see if you're right. Okay, welcome back. A pair of adjacent angles, there's lots to choose from. You can do 1 and 2. You can do 2 and 3, 3 and 6, are right next to each other. 6 and 5, 5 and 4, 4 and 1. If you go over here, 7 and 8. Okay, so lots of different adjacent angles. Vertical angles are harder to find, but there are a few options here. Okay, we got a couple straight lines crossing at this point. So if you think about this line and this line, okay, 6 and 1 are vertical from each other. So 1 and 6 is a pair of vertical angles. Okay, you think about these lines crossing, 3 and 4 are vertical. 2 and 5 are vertical. Okay, so lots of options there. A pair of complementary angles. Remember, complementary adds up to 90 degrees. So you want to look at 2 angles that add up to 90 degrees. Okay. The thing you do not want to say is that 7 is complementary. That doesn't make any sense. Right? Remember, complementary is a word that describes how 2 angles are related to each other. Okay. Angle 7 is a right angle. Okay. Complementary has to be more than 1 angle that adds up to a right angle. Okay. So in this case, it looks like 5 and 6 are complementary. They add up to a right angle. Okay. 1 and 2 are complementary. Okay. All right. For supplementary angles, we got a few options for that as well. Again, supplementary is going to add up to 180 degrees or a straight line. Okay. Well, anytime you see this, where you got a straight line that's just cut into 2 pieces, you know those are supplementary. So 7 and 8 is an option. Okay. Another thing you might notice, 3 and 4 are not right next to each other, but it looks like this is 90 degrees and this is 90 degrees. So 90 plus 90 is 180. So any 2 right angles will be supplementary. So 3 and 4 is another possibility. Okay, which means like 7 and 3. Those are also both right angles. 8 and 4, those are right angles. Okay, 8 and 3, 7 and 4, lots of possibilities. Okay. You could even take more than 2 angles and say like 1, 2, 3, for instance, are supplementary. Those 3 angles together make up 180 degrees. Okay, so any combination That's 180 degrees. There's more examples than that. 236 would work. 365, 654, 541. Those would all be complementary. Okay, so would more unusual pairings like 246 or 135. Okay, so lots of possibilities. Hopefully, you got one or more of those. Okay, so if we're looking at some complementary angles, so we got complementary and supplementary here. This will be kind of the last thing we look at. Again, the way we can use them is if we know one of the angles, we can find the other one. Complementary angles add up to 90. So in this case, we're just going to subtract these from 90. Okay. So if one angle is 52, if I take that away from 90, I get 48. Okay, so those two would be complementary. If this one's 19, I subtract that from 90, gives me 71. Okay, if these two are complementary, subtract this from 90, I get 14. Oop, what am I doing? Okay, if they are supplementary, then instead of subtracting them from 90, I'm subtracting from 180. So these numbers, it looks like the measurement of angle 1 are all the same. Oh, I should explain it. If you see the M, by the way, in front of the angle sign, that just stands for the measurement of that angle. So how many degrees it is. Okay. So if they're supplementary, I'm just subtracting from 180 instead of 90. Okay, so that'll give me 138 for the 138 for this one, 161 for that one, and 104 for this one. Okay, so that's how we're going to use it. Um, we're going to eventually get two pictures that look kind of like this, where we got to use more than one thing. This is going to be something we get to more specifically next week, but if we can preview it a little bit. If we have a picture like this, we know this is 75 degrees. We can use that to figure out all the other angles. Okay? So if you look, I see, well, 75 in this first angle here. All right, they make a straight line together. They're supplementary. So to figure out what one is, I can just subtract it from 180 and get 105. Okay. Well, now that I know angle 1, I can see angles 1 and 2 are supplementary. So they also have to add up to 180, which means 2 is going to be 75. Notice the vertical angles are equal to each other. Okay, that'll always happen. If I keep going around, 2 and 3 are also supplementary. So if that's 75, that has to be 105. So they add up to 180. Again, 3 and 1, which are vertical, end up both being 105. Vertical angles are always equal to each other. Okay. All right, we're going to leave it there. Okay. Yeah, we'll get into more of this next week. So we'll leave this here. Make sure your card notes are filled out, your flashcards are filled out, and let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.